Hello guys, in this video, I'm going to walk you through the process of creating unique wind down sound effects. We are going to do all of this inside FL Studio Patcher. If you are not familiar with FL Studio Patcher, I have a quick tutorial for you. Link in the video description down below. Towards the end of this video, we will add 2 custom controls into the Surface tab and link it to the Envelope controller knobs. I hope this tutorial can provide the guidance you need to build your own patcher. The first thing we need to do is to grab an empty patcher and drop it to the channel rack. Next, add the synthesizer plugin, that is the Flex, into the patcher. Double-click to open up the Flex, and let's organize the window a bit before we dive into the setup. Flex is an FL Studio preset-based synthesizer plugin instrument. We can use the 8 macro knobs to control the shape of the output sounds from Flex. Now, add the Envelope controller to the patcher. When a note is played on the keyboard, FL Studio sends a MIDI signal to both the Envelope controller and Flex. The green connector is for MIDI signal, yellow is audio, and red is the controller's parameter value. There are 2 more controllers that are required before we can start to make the connection. That is the peak controller and XY controller. Let's go ahead and add these 2 controllers, and I will explain the setup for the connection and their functionality. But before that, let's rename the controller to label there for Envelope, LFO, and Range. All right, the peak controller consists of 2 main sections. That is the peak, which responds to an audio input, and the LFO, which operates based on the knob values. Here, we only need to use the LFO section to generate the LFO signal, and we will be using the Envelope controller to control the speed of the LFO. The XY controller, in this setup, controls the minimum and maximum output signals coming from the peak controller. This signal is then sent to Flex to modulate the macro filter slider. That's basically it. Now let's continue and set up the connections. Right-click the Envelope controller and activate Articulator 1. Our intention is to modulate the LFO speed. Let's go ahead and enable it. Once the speed knob under the peak controller is activated, we can then connect the output of the articulator to the speed knob of the peak controller. Next, activate the LFO output from the peak controller and connect the level input of the XY controller. The LFO value from the peak controller will then be modulating the level of the XY controller, and this setup allows us to control the value range before sending it to the Flex. The final connection is between the X output of the XY controller and the macros filter slider in Flex. Activate the macros filter slider and connect these to XY controller. Now, the Envelope controller is modulating the speed of the LFO, but we can't hear the effects yet, as we've not activated some of the settings at this point, but the connections are done. Let's go ahead to adjust the parameters on the Envelope controller. Make sure the articulator part is set to Envelope and also set the mode to unipolar. Delete these 2 points. Click here to synchronize the Envelope controller with your DAW's tempo. Now, as the controller is now synced to the tempo, drag this point to the left until it reaches the end of bar 1. When you play a note on your keyboard, the Envelope controller will produce an increasing value from 0 to 1 for 1 bar duration. Okay, let's move on to the peak controller. Switch the LFO shape to a saw wave and increase the LFO amount to 100%. From the waveform, we can see the LFO decelerates as the speed is reduced. Use these base and envelope knobs to adjust the upper and lower limits of the speed on the peak controller. The base knobs on the envelope controller set the minimum amount, while the envelope knobs set the maximum limit. Play around with these two knobs to get a feel for how it works. Now, to complete the setup, set the speed knob under the XY controller to 100%. This sets the output of the controller to no delay. You can adjust the spline by moving it up or down. To modify the acceleration speed of the envelope controller. Sounds good. Let's try out some other presets from the Flex plugin. In FL Studio Patcher, we can add our own custom controls to the Control Surface tab and link them to the plugins inside the patcher. First, let's click on the Control Surface tab and then right-click to select Control Creator. With the Control Creator window, we can design our own knob. We will cover the Control Creator in more detail, maybe in another video. For now, just drag the default knob onto the Control Surface tab and then close the window. Right-click on the knob and rename it to Speed and Bass, as we want to link it to the bass knob in the envelope controller. Duplicate the knob and this time rename it to Decay. Turn off the edit mode and switch back to the Map tab. Now, activate both the bass and envelope knobs in the envelope controller. Create a duplicate of the XY controller since we want to control the value in between the connection. Activate the X level input and X output parameters. Let's go ahead to connect the custom decay knob from Control Surface to the XY controller and the envelope knob. As we can see, the decay knob is now linked to the envelope knob. Adjust the minimum and maximum levels in the XY controller to set the range. Now that the custom delay knob is set, Rename it to range for easy reference. Okay, we still have one knob left. This time we will use the Fruity Formula controller to filter the value. The formula controller generates automation control data based on user-defined formulas. For the base knobs, we want to set the maximum value to 50% of the custom control value and make the knob go in the opposite direction. Again, activate the necessary parameters and connect the custom base knob from the control surface to the formula controller and the base knobs. Let's test out the knobs we have created. Sounds good. I also want to show you that besides modulating the macro filter slider, we can actually modulate other effect plugins inside the patcher as well. Let's give this a try using the Fruity Love filter. We can do all sorts of crazy stuff with this plugin, such as adding complex delay, gating, and filtering effects to the sound. But right now, let's stick to the default preset and the cutoff knob for our purpose. Activate the cutoff knob and move the parameter connection from flex. And of course, the yellow audio connection must pass through the Love filter. The LFO is modulating the cutoff knob. From here, we can now tweak the value of the minimum and maximum knobs on the XI controller according to our need. Let's explore some other presets and test out the patcher we've just put together. With this all set, you can also try out various settings and plugins to experiment and create unique movements to your sound. I hope you found this tutorial helpful. Please subscribe to our channel. Thank you for watching.